Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to unpack this one for you today because we're looking at one of the most fascinating economic mystery boxes in the modern business world. On paper, the Netherlands simply shouldn't be an e-commerce heavyweight. I mean, we're talking about a nation roughly the combined size of Connecticut and Massachusetts. It's tiny. Yet a disproportionate share of Europe's entire digital commerce ecosystem was built right there. From the underlying infrastructure powering online transactions all the way up to the massive platforms shaping how the world shops, they absolutely dominate. Today, we're going to take a narrative approach to this case study, really piecing together the story of how this tiny nation deliberately engineered such a massive global footprint. Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a systematic breakdown ahead of us. First, we'll look at the Dutch e-commerce paradox, then geography and physical infrastructure, followed by a culture built for export. After that, we'll hit the policy and tax advantage, and finally, lay out the blueprint for a digital economy. All right, starting right off with Section 1. The Dutch e-commerce paradox. The contrast here is just staggering. The Netherlands has a population of barely over 18 million people. To put that into perspective, they actually have fewer people than the entire Paris metro area. They have a smaller economy than Poland. They are literally smaller than the state of South Carolina. So unlike the US or China, there's absolutely no vast built-in domestic market of hundreds of millions of people to help their companies comfortably scale up at home. And yet, look at the output. They built the payment processing giant Adyen, the world's largest online travel platform Booking.com, the massive file transfer service WeTransfer. So how does a country with no massive domestic market build the infrastructure that essentially powers global online trade? Well, the answer lies in four very deliberate structural advantages, starting with the actual physical engine of the country itself. Which brings us to Section 2, Geography and Physical Infrastructure. So the Netherlands sits directly at the heart of Europe's wealthiest consumer corridor, what's historically known as the Blue Banana. And that massive number right there, 244 million, that is the key to this whole engine. That's the number of consumers living within just a 1,000-kilometer radius of the Dutch border. It's wild. From a single warehouse in the Netherlands, a parcel can reach London, Paris, Frankfurt, or Brussels within 24 hours by road. It's exactly why massive global titans, companies like Nike and Samsung, base their European distribution hubs right here. Literally, one warehouse can effectively serve half the continent overnight. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is what happens when you weaponize that geographic placement with world-class infrastructure. You get absolute dominance. Just look at the 2024 port cargo data. The Port of Rotterdam is Europe's largest seaport, moving more than 397 million tons of cargo. I mean, look at the chart. It is moving significantly more cargo than Antwerp and Hamburg combined, which handled around 340 million tons. Rotterdam basically exercises absolute dominance over the flow of physical goods into the continent. But the crazy part is, it doesn't stop at the sea. Just a super short, 40-minute drive north of Rotterdam sits Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport, which handles 1.49 million tons of freight. So you have Europe's biggest seaport and one of its biggest cargo airports practically sitting right next to each other. And they're both plugged into the exact same dense national logistics grid of roads, railways, and inland waterways. This physical engine pushes goods deeper into Europe way faster than any competing route could even manage. Add in the fact that almost every single Dutch household has high-speed internet, and you've got a flawless physical and digital foundation. But hardware needs software to run it, right? So let's shift to Section 3, a culture built for export. This cultural operating system has actually been compiling for over 4 centuries. Back in 1602, the Dutch East India Company became one of the world's very first multinational corporations, basically pioneering the idea of global supply chains. And this brilliantly illustrates how that legacy is essentially a continuous thread of DNA hardwired into modern tech founders today. Because their domestic market is just way too small to be the end goal, Dutch founders default to designing for export and cross-border distribution from literally day one. Their corporate communication is famously direct. Hierarchies are loose, ideas are debated openly, and that allows for the rapid, constant iteration that tech startups desperately need to survive. And this whole export mindset, it's completely supercharged by language. The Netherlands has placed first among non-native speakers on the EF English Proficiency Index 7 times in the last 15 years, and they've literally never dropped out of the top 3. So why does this matter so much for e-commerce? Because it completely removes friction. When a Dutch founder starts a company, every single product page, help center article, and customer service email can be written flawlessly in English, which is the working language of internet commerce, right from day one. They are born global. Which leads us to Section 4, the policy and tax advantage. Okay, let me paint a picture for you to make this bureaucratic moat really tangible. Imagine you run your own clothing brand, all right? And you import from Morocco to keep your production costs down. Morocco is outside the EU. Well, in most European countries, when those finished garments arrive at the border, you have to pay VAT, value added tax, immediately. That locks up your critical working capital for weeks, sometimes months, while you sit around waiting to reclaim it. But the Dutch government created this thing called Article 23. This allows you to simply defer the VAT at the border and just record it on your periodic return later. For high-volume e-commerce, this shift from paying immediately to declaring later is a massive, massive cash flow advantage. It gives founders instant liquidity to reinvest right back into stock, marketing, and explosive growth. And this government moat extends perfectly into digital payments, too. The Dutch regulator acted early, they were predictable, and honestly, they were highly founder-friendly when it came to payment licenses. By getting a single license from the Dutch central bank, companies could utilize a regulatory mechanism called passporting. What that means is that one single Dutch license grants you payment processing approval across all 27 EU member states. So because the Dutch regulator was so fast and efficient, Dutch payment companies got a massive head start scaling across Europe, leaving competitors who were stuck in countries with slower, more conservative regulators completely in the dust. And actually, that is just the tip of the iceberg. The complete policy stack is an unstoppable powerhouse. They offer generous R&D incentives. They allow corporate tax on qualifying intellectual property to drop as low as 9%, which, by the way, is huge for companies building payment tech and fraud detection tools. On top of that, they feature highly liberal hiring rules that give skilled migrants major tax breaks. Make no mistake, this isn't an accident. This is an overwhelming competitive advantage deliberately constructed by the government to attract and scale digital business. Finally, Section 5, Blueprint for a Digital Economy. Let's pull this all together. So the crucial point is that this entire mystery boils down to one core thesis. When the physical world moves quickly, the digital world compounds even faster. The Netherlands proves that e-commerce isn't just about throwing up a website and renting a warehouse somewhere. It's about engineering an entire synergistic environment. You've got physical geography seamlessly plugged into world-class infrastructure. You have 400 years of trading culture meeting top-tier English proficiency. And you have government policy designed specifically to maximize founder cash flow and speed up regulatory expansion. They are all compounding on top of one another to create an ecosystem built purely for acceleration. The Dutch e-commerce paradox isn't really a paradox at all once you look under the hood, is it? It's a highly deliberate, masterfully crafted blueprint. Which leaves us with this final, kind of provocative thought. If a country smaller than South Carolina can engineer this level of physical and digital acceleration to basically dominate global markets, what is your country doing right now to engineer its own acceleration? Are the policies, the culture, and the infrastructure in your market working together to compound growth, or are they just causing friction? It's definitely something to think about as you evaluate the competitive landscapes around you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this breakdown helps you see the mechanics of global e-commerce in a whole new light. Catch you next time.